Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is November 21st, 2024, and this is episode 902. It's going to be memorable for a little while, but at some point I'm going to call an episode 804 or some bullshit. But I'm James Jones. I am improbably still the host of this podcast, joined today by Mr. John Lindeman.
It's great to be here, James.
How's your joke writing for the 900 number going?
It's been kind of a slog. I mean, eventually you run out of the really good stuff.
I mean, keep in mind we talked about this. WCW had one in the year 2000, so there was no really good stuff there. Mm-hmm. So the bar's very low.
Well, I guess if you're a professional like me, you set the bar a little bit higher than the average person, right?
A little higher than the average Vince Russo?
Yeah, a little higher than Vic Venom.
Who apparently wanted to fake his own death in real life and then make it part of the show. Which is great.
That's great.
He's gonna pretend to be a ghost haunting the show.
Great idea, bro.
What a stupid plot. Honestly, I kind of wish he had done it. Can you imagine going on the network and watching the parts where the ghost of the faked death man was haunting the show?
Yeah, I could see him doing it too.
Haunting David Arquette,
yeah,
the champion. Yeah, it'd be great. It'd have been great. It'd have been great to watch now. It'd have been terrible to watch at the time. Also joined today by Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
Good evening.
Good evening. Are you working on your pithy responses? That was your assignment, I believe.
What does pithy mean?
Short, witty.
Oh boy.
I would say short but substantive.
Yes.
What does substantive mean, you ask? Forget I said it.
John's just gonna deep dive the dictionary where that's great content for keeping people on the line.
Mm-hmm.
Last but not least, joined by Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
I thought of a segment as I was listening to it for Greg, I have a problem. And I describe the problem to you and I say, I need the most appropriate Simpsons reference. What can you do for me?
Just your Simpsons reference troubleshoot. It's probably going to have to be something in the, I can't even remember what, it's in the 90s, you know what I mean? After that. Yeah, I didn't.
Well, that's where most references come from anyway.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, I'm sure it is. And it's still a lot of episodes and a lot of classics. So, I could probably work with it. I was just thinking, all these people that dial the 900 number, if they've been listening to us at double speed, they're going to get it on the podcast, as apparently people do. It's not something I've ever done with podcasts, but,
I would lose my goddamn mind.
If they then not imagine the shock they're going to get where not only do they now we're not double speed, but in fact we are deliberately speaking very slowly to bog them down
1/2 speed.
Yeah, I'm pretty much going to sound like I'm in the Black Lodge, and they're just going to have to sit there. They have no alternative. Putting the phone down, nah.
So I want to note that listening to that episode made me go back and read the plot of Death Wish 4. Do you remember what the plot of that one was?
Oh, I do. I do remember that Death Wish 4 involves. It basically he's manipulated into kind of playing these two drug empires against each other. And it turns out his benefactor is not a kindly old man with loads of money that lost someone to drugs and wants to destroy these two. He's a competitor that wants to take over their territory. And then he is the person whose dummy gets RPG'd at the end.
So the intro is the part that cracks me up because it's a year after 3. He's back to being an architect somehow, with no repercussions for his previous actions.
Just steps right back into that.
Yep. But he's haunted by nightmares of his past crimes. Is the best word to describe it. And then he I want to say it's the daughter of his current girlfriend dies from crack. And that's the jumping off point.
Yeah, it's like, that's the problem. They keep killing everyone that's ever been in his life. So you have to just invent new people. And then your Bronson with his trademark, ability to emote, make sure that you still feel the pain, because he said, I feel toward her as if she were my own daughter. So, then it's real then. No, you can't just write it off as some sort of plot contrivance. It's from the heart.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say, what part of the 80s is this from? Because that's where it was in the 80s. It was always if somebody died, it was because they were. I know what it is. But if the thing is in the 80s, if somebody died, it was always from smoking crack. Like that was the convenient crutch. Like, oh, this young person died. It was from smoking crack, so I have to go chase down the drug dealers.
And it was never cocaine. I mean, crack is a form of cocaine, but it was never like nose candy, because that was what the producers of the movie were using.
Right. Well, that's what
was the 80s.
That's what the rich people used. That was the rich person's drug, and then the poor person's or misguided young person, they chose crack.
Who almost certainly got it from a poor person with melanin.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So I was 87, and I was like, "Wow, there you go." At first I thought,
you know what?
I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was the 90s, but no, it was in fact the 80s.
So, we're going to do the second segment of talking about picking a DS game, because this is the anniversary of the DS's release, 20 years. In fact, today is the day in North America. But I'm kind of thinking about a different path now, because I just realized that Death Wish 4, the Crackdown, get the pun, get it?
Oh, man. Wow.
Came out November 6, 1987. So, why aren't we instead trying to find the most Death Wish style game that we can do a retroactive on? I mean, if you think about it, every year is a Death Wish year. And so
it certainly was then. I mean, they ran through 2, 3, 4, and 5. I think there was a 5 after Golan and Globa split up. I mean
Death Wish 5, The Face of Death.
Yeah.
Yeah, after a 7-year layoff.
Weirdly, the 5th one is kind of simultaneously better and worse than the 4th one, because it is more like a normal movie rather than just complete bullshit. But that makes it worse.
Right. So the best part
is, to be clear, there is still many high percentage bullshit. Because if you've seen there's plenty of bullshit.
But it's not 100%.
So is Death Wish 4 more like Rambo 2?
No, Rambo 2 is more like Rambo 1.
No, but
by comparison.
Well, I would say the Crackdown is more your Rambo 3, where it's just like we've completely lost the plot now and we've just gone way off the rails.
The best part of The Face of Death is the poster, where it's just I would say 75% of Bronson's face with his fake hair, holding a gun to his face in front of what appears to be the entrance to Congress, not emoting because he can't, and just stone-faced. It's like, this is the face of death, this man in a bad toupee? All right, sure, let's go for it. Death Wish 5, the final installment of the Death Wish film series, was written and directed by Alan A. Goldstein. Charles Bronson reprises his role, his final theatrical starring role, and his final appearance as the character of Paul Kersey. In the film, Kersey tries to protect his girlfriend, again, from brutal mobsters that are threatening her fashion business. Yeah, I mean, that's what my mafia organization does. I can't talk about it any further. Thank you, and please understand. Genius. Like, why would you still be dating? Also, he was back in New York at this point.
I love in the Wikipedia article, Death Wish 5 was a box office disaster. That's what it says under reception.
I mean, I'm amazed it wasn't straight to video. I mean, that really was like where that sort of
peak,
stuff,
yeah,
kind of should be, shall we say? But also, I love the way that he did this tennis match with New York and LA. It's like 1 is New York, 2 is LA, 3 is New York, 4 is LA, and 5 is back in New York again. Apparently, I think forgot
that. All right,
that.
so 7 years after Detective Sid Rainer discovered that he was the vigilante, Paul Kersey returns to New York City in the Witness Protection Program, having picked up the name Paul Stewart, which isn't even that far. But why would they have sent him to a place he's previously been engaged in vigilante behavior as part of Witness Protection?
Right.
Wouldn't they have sent him to, like, Des Moines? Mm-hmm. Somewhere far away? I'm going to say that nobody's competent in this universe. Like, no one at all, period. It is a universe of complete incompetency. And I love that. I love that for me. I love that for us. I love this for this. You know, this film series could have been the Fast series. Like, if you think about it. Like, we could have gotten the Fast 6, Fast 7, Fast 8 of Death Wish. But no, it went further and further down the random acts of vengeance tube. Also, we just need to rename this podcast Radio Free Death Wish. Honestly, like it's where we're at. Maybe for like an April 1st episode, we'll do that. I don't know. We'll need to get music made in the style of Death Wish music.
Well, when you say that, like, I mean, the first film, which had nothing to do with the Canon Group, was it's kind of like a regular movie. But
right.
The second film, when they got involved, they got Jimmy Page to do the soundtrack. So it's a lot of like kind of these like weird guitar noises and stuff. So I get it's an interesting choice. And then by the time they got to the fourth one, I guess they were too cheap to pay anybody anymore. So it's just a bunch of temp score from Missing in Action and shit.
Nice.
That's fantastic.
What if we have a section on the 900 number where it's I give you a plot description of a canon film and see if you can guess it. We just need a third party to go like, no, you didn't give him enough. You can't just say, 1988 Dutch film. Like, no. You got to give me more than that.
Delta Force.
God, I can't believe they have a Gene Wilder film. It's just fucking... Gene Wilder, Gilda Radner, Dom DeLuise, and Jonathan Pryce. Like, this is the... how? Oh, man. Just terrible. Distributed through Orion Pictures through a deal with HBO. The film flopped, grossing just short of a $9 million budget. Great. It earned... Wait. The film earned Dom DeLuise, the Razzie Award for Worst Supporting Actress. Oh. I see. Great. So, yeah. Awesome. Again, Golan Globus contributes nothing to the world.
I don't know.
Never
Giving us a lot of
never
content.
Will. I mean, yeah, but not good content.
No.
Bad content. I mean, this isn't even Canon Group. This is specifically Golan Globus. Canon Group, you start getting into some weirder shit. Also, occasionally, this is a movie that tells me what the director's fetish was. Cool. Good to know. Thanks for that. New business. So we're going straight from director fetishes into Mario and Luigi Brothership. Greg, I know you've been playing it. How you doing?
Yeah. Put a few more hours in. I haven't made that much progress, so I don't know whether anything's materially kind of changed since last week, so I kind of won't dwell on it. I'm sure there'll be other occasions to get in, further into it. But, just really kind of one of the things that I'd say that's been nice about it in a way that probably hasn't helped, like, kind of, ratchet up the kind of the need to put loads of time into it is the general structure of the game is like, you kind of have this like home base island, which it's kind of an island is kind of a boat, hence the kind of Brothership like pun. But like you kind of go to other islands and your goal is to kind of connect them together. This is the way apparently that the world once was, like all these islands kind of drifted on the ocean together in some sort of flotilla, and you're putting that back together, that structure. But what this actually means in terms of the gameplay is that you have quite a lot of like relatively like brief kind of tasks to do, like it's like, okay, you go to an island, you've got to, maybe solve a particular problem, do, some little quest, and then you kind of have achieved what you needed to connect it up to the central kind of hub, which then means that you can return to it at any time, whether it might be something that's needed for the story or like these side quests that pop up. But that kind of structure means that you can, it's very suitable for portable play. It's just like, oh, yeah, you know, kind of waking up out of sleep, play for, you know, a pretty brief period of time, but feel like you've accomplished something. And then the next time, you know, it's going to be off to some other island, or, you know, maybe do a few side quests before you go off to the next island. So yeah, in that sense, I feel like it's a really nice fit for, you know, the playing portably, but, you know, it does mean that, yeah, it's been kind of just putting in, you know, little short bursts. That's kind of what I've had time for, and it's still been enjoyable, but we'll kind of we'll return to it, I think, you know, in a future episode when I've really kind of got deeper into the main quest. But other than that, there was, of course, just before recording, we finally had another addition to the regular Switch Online library, with a Game Boy game as well. You know, it's nice to have more Game Boy stuff. Sorta. And the somewhat peculiar case of only Donkey Kong Land being added. Now, it's just, I say that because no surprise that there'd be something DK around the corner. I think, you know, we talked about the theme park stuff last week. We know we're only a couple of months away now from the DKC Returns coming back on Switch, and they've actually got quite a lot of stuff in the kind of catalogue that they haven't added to the various bits of Switch Online yet, right? I mean, it is also, as well as the 20th anniversary of the DS, it's the 30th anniversary of DKC. So, again, another reason to put your DK stuff on there. Obviously, the original DKC games are already there. But, you know, in addition to the Donkey Kong Land games, you've got things like, you know, the Game Boy Color version of Donkey Kong Country, which is, you know, much more of an actual port of Donkey Kong Country, whereas the Land games are kind of the separate games really, but heavily based on the kind of console cousin. But, you know, they've had to be, you know, significantly adapted, and they've got some unique elements like different enemies and different like level themes and bosses and things. So, you know, those are distinct things. Maybe we'll see that GBC version someday. But you've also got things outside of Donkey Kong Country. You've got, you know, the King of Swing, I think it was on a GBA. I played the DS sequel to that, which kind of went with the pre-rendered style, you know, that more in keeping with the Donkey Kong Country games. But I've never played the first one, which I think got decent reviews. You know, obviously it was kind of a little bit, I don't know, it's a bit pejorative to say gimmicky, but, you know, the whole thing of like just using the shoulder buttons to kind of swing around those, kind of, you know, vertically kind of oriented, even not a great fit for the GBA's low resolution and screen dimensions, admittedly, but in that sense, probably the DS version was a more natural fit. But yeah, you know, there's that, and you've got DK64, of course. We must assume, whether anybody likes it or not, is coming to the expansion pack before long.
Yeah. I mean, all right. So, like, we make fun of DK64 a lot, but that's because a lot of us got through it. Functionally, moment to moment, DK64 is mostly fine. The issue is the shit that DK64 asks you to do to progress through the game, which is just unseemly, might be the word to describe it. Hey, you need to pick up bananas to feed them to this fuck so he can be big enough to open the door, but you can only pick up the bananas if you're the right character right now. That shit's really annoying. Like, really super annoying. And that's the stuff that makes this game so unpalatable. There is a ROM hack of this game where the barrel that you change Kongs just floats over your head at all times. And so you could just change Kongs whenever, and that makes the game so much more playable, if more stupid. Because there's just this big DK barrel following you around. But yeah, it's coming. It's gonna happen. Is there anything else we're missing besides the other Game Boy games and the King of Swing and 64? That's really it, isn't it?
I think that's pretty much your big kind of omissions to this point. I mean, as it concerns Donkey Kong Land, I've never played it before. I'm sure I've mentioned over the years, it doesn't seem like something I'd be desperately interested in. As again, like with the the DKC games on Super Nintendo, for my taste, were a little snug in terms of, they had these relatively large sprites. Because it's like, well, you got to show off the pre-render graphics, right? It'd be ridiculous to have this all elaborate kind of setup with, we're going to have these pre-render graphics and sell people on this notion that somehow, we've discovered this font of technological youth for the Super Nintendo, and then like have like very small like versions of those models. So it made it kind of, and it plays quite fast as well. I'd say DKC does, you have to think some of that played into that was probably the whole Sonic thing, of just, the Sega had a certain amount of success making fun of, oh, look at Mario, it's slow, Sonic's not slow, so it's probably like, so we've got to have these big impressive sprites, but we've also got to have a game that can sort of play a decent clip, even if it's not, like a Sonic game necessarily, where you're zipping around a bunch of like, very sort of bespoke kind of landscapes, like it's a more orthodox platformer than that. But the combination of that means that you don't always feel like you've got the farthest kind of field of view in front of you.
No.
And so to take that and say, what about if we shrink it more? And we're talking Game Boy graphics, and we're talking about no colour. Always did sound very appealing to me. But as I've said, I'm sure people have heard many, many times, in this scenario with the subscription service, I'll probably mess around with it a little bit for a few hours just to see how the hell they even attempted to adapt this to the Game Boy. And, that is, part of, what makes this a little bit interesting is just the opportunity to kind of mess around and see stuff that otherwise you're like, nah, that's a pass from me.
Yeah. I did think of one other one with Diddy Kong Racing.
No, yeah. So that's true. Yeah, if we talk, it's, that is what I'd be interested to revisit, because I had it for N64, got quite a lot of enjoyment out of it, but, it seeing how it kind of, holds up in terms of the track design and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, you can remember, having fun messing around with multiplayer and like some of the relatively unique things like boss races and stuff, and, the different types of, cars, like you had planes and the hovercraft and stuff, but the nitty gritty of like, how good was the track design? Yeah, that's just gone from my brain. So I'd be interested to fill that gap in. And you got to think that's coming too, haven't you? With all the other rare stuff that we've seen.
Did we ever get the NES port of Donkey Kong, of the original arcade Donkey Kong?
It's got to be on there.
It's got to be. It's a Black Label game.
Yeah,
it's got to be.
That was probably there at the beginning. What we probably don't have is that thing that they made on 3DS where they called it like it was like official ROM hack of that version, where they added the cement pie factory, whatever you want to call it,
the missing level.
Yeah, they kind of added that back in for a kind of, I can't remember what it was. It was something like, maybe it was if you bought a particular hardware bundle, it was like packed in, or so, you had got a code for it. This ROM hack version of the NES Donkey Kong Virtual Console game.
We do have the Arcade Archives version of that.
Oh
game,
yeah,
so
no, exactly. You got the Arcade Archives, absolutely. I mean, you have to buy that individually. That's Hamster's thing, but that you can do the vertical mode with that, and it's actually. I mean, I don't know whether it's maybe. I think some people have said the emulation isn't quite perfect with regard to something like something very particular about like the way the sound works with the footstep sound effect or something. But generally speaking, it's a pretty good, solid, accurate recreation of the arcade game.
You, within the hearing range of my voice, will not notice. Let's put it that way. Somebody will, but not you. Because if you're that person, we've already pissed you off at some point and you're not listening anymore.
That seems a reasonable proposition.
Yeah, so you're right. I'm now looking at I was like, I've got to be missing one, right? I must have forgotten something. No. There is like I said, the Donkey Kong Land 3 is GB Game Boy and Game Boy Color, which is weird. And then Donkey Kong Country has a port to Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, there were definitely the GBA game, the GBA versions of DKC came along, I think by the time you got to the third one, you were pretty much talking about the DS come along at that point,
right.
Which was not obviously like the Final Fantasy Advance, those versions of like 4, 5 and 6 ended up being well after the DS. I think it was like 2007 or something, the version of 6, but it wasn't that late. But the interesting thing about the version of DKC 3 on GBA is that they have a different soundtrack, because I think it's something like maybe Evelyn Fisher did the soundtrack of the third one originally, and then someone else did it the next time. It's a little bit odd, and I would imagine I don't know how well they managed to kind of adapt, because as many Super Nintendo games as were on GBA, it did not have the analogous sound capabilities natively, so you kind of had to either like compress some stuff or fudge it a bit or just have it sound worse. So I can't say as I've ever heard those versions myself, like, or how different that DKC3 soundtrack is. But yeah, whether they'll get to the point of putting those up as well as having, the actual versions. There's precedent because they've done it with Yoshi's Island, but we'll see.
I'm looking at the Game Boy Advance versus the Super Nintendo versus the Game Boy Color only version of Donkey Kong Country. Boy, that Game Boy Color one looks bad. Because it's still pre-rendered sprites, but pre-rendered down to an 8-bit system. And boy...
Again, the resolution is the big thing with that, isn't it? It's just like, look, the Super Nintendo resolution is bloody low, especially for doing, sprites based on, computer graphics model things, and when you look at them now, especially without the quality of a CRT television to kind of merge everything, with the way, that technology, that display technology worked. It's very obvious. It's just like this is a low resolution animated GIF of something bigger, something, that's actually, was higher resolution. But to do that down to the Game Boy level is just, it always seemed like a bridge too far for me. But, now at least I have the chance to do it firsthand and have an somewhat informed opinion at least.
That's Land, though. That's technically a separate game. This is the color port of Country.
But I mean, the resolution of the GBC is still the same as that. So it's the same problem. At least you've got some color to make it a bit more distinct. But of course, again, you've got so many fewer colors than you had on Super Nintendo, which that was relatively a strength of the Super Nintendo was its color palette. So at least, it could, it might not have the highest resolution to recreate those, computer graphics models, but at least had enough colors to kind of sell it. And then you lose that to a fair degree, don't you, going to GBC? I can only assume.
Yeah. So the Super Nintendo could do 256 at the same time out of a basically 33,000 color palette. So you could actually do pretty good. The Game Boy Color also has that same, it's technically speaking 32,768. It's 2 to the 15th power. But it basically, it limited how those palettes were distributed to background palette of 8. Sprites had 8 palettes, and then there was another set of palettes somewhere. It was 8 background palettes of 4, 8 sprite palettes of 3 plus transparent, which means you could only have 56 colors on screen without doing some kind of wizardry in the programming. So you can imagine less than a quarter the number of colors, and they tried to make a direct port of Donkey Kong Country onto the Game Boy Color. And also lower resolution. There's problems. There's a lot of problems. It looks like dog shit. Donkey Kong is pink because they needed that color for something else, I guess. But you also see this with things like there's that Mega Man Extreme where they tried to do Mega Man X games on the Game Boy Color, but they didn't try to one-to-one it. They knew what they were dealing with, so...
Well, and I would imagine you've got like more capability there to kind of consider redrawing some stuff, you know?
Right.
Whereas the whole point with these is like, well, it's, you know, it's these versions, these sprite versions of these pre-rendered things. Like if you change that, then it's
right.
it's over, isn't it?
You've lost the plot. Yeah. That's. I guess we could get all the versions of it on here. Get the Game Boy Advance version, get the Game Boy Color version. Fuck it, let's go. But, good lord. All right, anything else?
No, I think that'll do it for me.
All right, I'm going to talk very, very briefly about Consider It 4. Consider It, 2 words, but it's a pun about Consider It. There you can see how it's a funny joke. These are Japanese games. I've talked about Consider It 1, talked about Consider It 2, talked about Consider It 3. Talk about Consider It 4. Guess why? Because they're basically the same goddamn game. It's just extra scenarios. What is it? I always use the WarioWare expression, but it's not really accurate, but I use it anyway because it's easier to say than what I'm actually going to say, which is you are presented with 100 scenarios that are about loosely in some cases, maybe not even loosely, tenuously related to being considerate to others. And you are able to control one element in this scenario. It's a black and white thing, except for whatever you're controlling, which is red. And you don't necessarily have any indication of what the scenario is. You have to kind of intuit that from what you're looking at, or what your options are on how you can be considerate in that scenario, or what your controls are. You just kind of mess around with the buttons until you figure out what you can do. I will give you an example. You are a line that is sitting on top of a black line. You can't figure out what you're looking at. And then suddenly you see a drawing of tweezers descending. And if you jiggle the control stick, you'll realize, oh, I'm a hair on someone's face. And these tweezers are coming to pluck it. You can stand straight up. You can duck down to be out of the reach of the tweezers. You can move to be on the other side of them. You can wiggle around like you're dancing. Those are your choices. If you stand straight up and get plucked, the scenario ends. If you dodge the tweezers a couple times, the scenario also ends. What does that mean? Well, behind the scenes, the game is evaluating what choices you took. And it's not necessarily binary. There might be multiple. It's binary is multiple. There could maybe more than 2. And giving you a score. And every 5 one of these scenarios, it stops and evaluates how considerate you were. And you might get a rating that's like truly considerate. Or you might get a rating that's somewhat considerate. Or vaguely considerate. Or in one case where I was just an absolute goddamn asshole for all 5s. It was just ellipses, 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 considerate. Because that's the idea. You could do whatever you want. You could be as inconsiderate or considerate as your mind allows you to imagine, as the mind of these developers did. So another example being you're coming up an escalator. What do you do at the top of the escalator? I mean, you get out of the way, right? Well, sure. If you walk off screen, the scenario ends. If you turn around and walk down the escalator, people get stuck behind you. And it just slowly builds up and creates a traffic jam. That's an evaluation. If you start there's one where there's a lot of like media parodies in there. So it's a guy in overalls drawn in the style of this game. And he is walking and then suddenly a star shows up and he grabs it and he starts blinking. And then a red turtle comes across the screen. And it's like, oh, this is a Mario parody. I get it. And you control the turtle. If you press any button away from the non-Mario, your turtle goes flying off because, you know, Mario is in superstar mode. So if you touch the turtle's going to die. But if you just keep walking, you will run into Mario and slowly push him off the screen because apparently the whole time the superstar doesn't do anything. They were just throwing for the content. And you could slowly create a backlog of turtles who are now backed up and pushing him off the screen. It's stuff like that. It's weird, stupid jokes that come out to scenarios. There's one that sets up like a old Super Nintendo RPG where it just says "wake up" on screen, wake up, it's your birthday. And then the screen goes from black to what looks like a top-down RPG from the Super Nintendo era. And it's a woman standing over a man in bed. It's your 18th birthday. Go to the castle and be certified as a man. And then you get control, and there's 2 castles on screen. One is 18 with the no sign on it, and some other indications that this is clearly a we'll say this erotic castle, and the other one is just a regular regal-looking castle. And what direction you walk in counts towards that final score. At the end of the 100 challenges, you're given some kind of evaluation overall. These things last seconds at best. And it's just a bunch of dumb jokes. Now, is this game pretty thin? Yeah, it's pretty thin. But they're like $5. And they're goofy, and they're silly, and quite a few of them are very funny. One of my all-time favorites was the running joke with the girlfriend. I've seen a few of them in this one. I've only got through half the scenarios. They're on a cruise this time, and it says, hey, we're on a cruise, we should do the thing. Or we're on a cruise ship, we should do the thing. And you probably already know what the thing is. It's the I'm the king of the world scene. You can imagine what deranged shit you can do instead of standing behind your girlfriend and posing like Leonardo DiCaprio. Does that include just walking off the front of the ship? Sure does. That's what I did. Right into the ocean. Just like John Lindemann playing a game of Rare's pirate thing.
Yes, Sea of Thieves.
Walk right off the front of the boat.
That's what I do.
I know. Over and over again, because you respawn on the boat and do it again. Yeah, you could be John. You can be John in this game. Go for it. It's right there for you.
It's a John simulator. It's about time one existed.
A little bit. A common one that happens, and it happened in this one too, is you're on a subway train, because again, this is for Japan, and there's someone who comes into the train, or someone gets off the train, and 2 people are talking, and one of them's sitting, one of them's standing, and you're sitting next to the standing person. The considerate thing is to move to the empty seat so they can sit together. The inconsiderate thing is to continue to sit in that seat and force that one person to keep standing or sit on the other side of you. The truly inconsiderate thing is to stand up and sit in the lap of the person who was already sitting. And that's the kind of options the game gives you. I'm surprised often what deranged shit the game thought of that you can try. So yeah, like, these are fun. These are fun, stupid things. I would buy whatever one strikes your fancy. They're all the same. They're all the same. You can play 1, you can play 4, you can play, it's not like there are some running jokes that go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. The one where it's like you're walking with your girlfriend and it's like, where do you want to go? And it's the 2 choices are, one's like a nice restaurant and the other one is an adult establishment. And then there's another one where it's the adult or it's a nice restaurant and a gunpla convention, but your girlfriend is a mech. So like the actual considered options take her to that. And then the last one where your girlfriend has a cow's head, it's like vegetarian restaurant, beef restaurant. It's like, okay, no, I get it. There is some, like, you play 1, some of that carries over 2, you play 2, some of it carries over to 3. They did try to pretend like there's an unfolding plot in 3 where it's like, now you're an adult, married adult with children, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. It's all stupid and pointless anyway. But yeah, I enjoy these. I enjoy this one. I enjoy this one exactly the same as I've enjoyed the others because it is, largely speaking, exactly the same. These are like $6 retail. Go for it. They're stupid and funny. And if you like that kind of like dumb slapstick shit, you'll probably get at least $5 of amusement out of them. Some of the later ones have multiplayer, which is even weirder, but fundamentally it's still the same thing. And that's it. You now have the option to consider purchasing it yourself. So, if you want to be told how considerate you are by the standards of Japanese, how well you water plants, you can do that. Enjoy. Guillaume.
Yeah?
What are you up to?
Yeah, so I finished Trials of Mana. I just wanted to note that it's a really good remake. You know, like the remakes from Square Enix haven't always been all that great.
Nope.
But by this team, which I didn't really know, Xeen, Xeen, they seem to be an okay. They seem to be doing an okay job. They also are responsible for the recent remake of Romancing Saga 2, which got like surprisingly good reviews. So
Yes.
These are guys who and gals, I don't know. This is a studio that knows what it's doing. It seems make the games playable, not too buggy, fun, and fairly faithful to the original. And I say all this because it doesn't go without saying, because especially the Mana series has been plagued by such terrible remakes. You know, like
Yes.
the first Seiken Densetsu, the Game Boy game Final Fantasy Adventure, has been remade on the GBA as a Sword of Mana. I played the part of it back in the day, and I didn't finish it. It was just a little bit too buggy and not all that fun. I know that there was like a PSP remake, or maybe it was a Vita. I don't know. I didn't play that one, but it was poorly regarded. It was like very cheap looking. Several phone ports,
Ones
just
that have
stuff.
weird display stuff where it's like font nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah. So at least this one, just to repeat what I said last week, is kind of at least based on a good model. Like it's using a lot of, like it's mostly a Mana game, but it seems like for the flow of the combat, it took a lot of inspiration from modern East games. And that's good. That's a good template to follow. So congrats. It was about like 25 hours to get to the credits. So that's fairly short, I guess, by RPG standards. They did add the kind of a post game for this remake, and it just adds about like 5 hours of dungeon crawling. It's very much that part is not especially praiseworthy. It's very much the kind of like extra dungeon that we've seen in a lot of Square Enix remakes. Like the Dawn of Souls on the Final Fantasy 1 and 2 on the game on the GBA. Like there's like, oh yeah, like, now that you've beaten the game, here's this extra dungeon that's super tough. No real new enemies, maybe new enemy color palettes, and yeah, it's gonna be really hard, and no story. Sorry. And so, yeah, so in this kind of post game, there's some witch that's the personification of chaos or something. I don't know. I didn't really care. You have to go fight her. To fight her, they give you an extra class change, because that's one big thing in Trials of Mana, I guess, that separates it from the other games, is that the class change is a big deal. Like you get to choose between like you class change twice in the original game, and you can choose between light and dark versions. Like usually like dark just means like more combat based, and light means maybe support or healing or stuff like that. Anyway, so they give you an extra class change. They give you more dungeons to go and increase your levels. But those dungeons are basically just repurposed previous areas. They might have like, okay, like now, oh, the dungeon's inside your memories. Oh no. And like, okay, so it's this town that you've visited a lot. But now there might be ice all over the place, because that was kind of an easy way to put new cosmetic over this familiar area. And, like it's kind of like a cheap way to produce more content. I went through it, like I enjoyed it enough, but it was just like, yeah, this was not necessary. The game could have ended where it was supposed to end. I always do this. I always end up talking down the games that I'm trying to talk up. Anyway, good game. I'm probably not going to jump into Visions of Mana yet, which is the new Mana game that came out on Xbox and PlayStation, and has not come out on the Switch because it's, I guess it's a little bit more demanding. Unfortunately, basically, like like the day or the week after the game was released, Square Enix got rid of the team that made it. So I don't know if we're going to see a port on the Switch too. And that's a shame because from everything I heard, Visions of Mana was a very good Mana game. And again, that's not a given. They haven't all been good.
No. No, they haven't.
So it kind of sucks that this happened. So hopefully, fingers crossed that we get something on the Switch too. But anyway, I need a break from this formula anyway. I guess the other thing that I can talk about is that I've watched on Amazon Like a Dragon, Yakuza. I don't know what my expectations were. I knew I was not expecting a home run like the Fallout TV series. Because that was kind of... seems to really be... Fallout was really fucking good. is what I'm going to say. Like, it was just okay, like perfectly fit inside the world, the universe of the games, but it was a new story, but it nailed that kind of, kind of dark comedy that the series is known for. Anyway, so I kind of knew that the odds of Like a Dragon Yakuza being that good would be slim. Like a Dragon was not very good. I'm sorry to say.
I heard that from people who were like, I really wanted this to be good, and it really wasn't.
Yeah, and I remember a friend of the show, Soren, on the Discord said, like, well, people seem to be complaining that it's not the story of the games, but that doesn't make it bad. Like it can't be a good adaptation if they just make it a good Yakuza story for TV. Unfortunately, they did not make a great Yakuza story for TV. Like it is kind of and this is my only experience playing through an entire Yakuza game or Like a Dragon game outside of Yakuza Like a Dragon. So this show is called Like a Dragon Yakuza. Like a Dragon, colon Yakuza.
Yes.
The game where Ichiban is the main character is Yakuza, colon Like a Dragon.
Sure.
Ichiban is not in this show. So this is about the series formerly known as Yakuza, which are now trying to call Like a Dragon. So Like a Dragon Yakuza is a Kiryu story. The only full Kiryu story that I played through was Yakuza 0, which was a prequel. And that's
not really the Kiryu that you're going to be encountering here.
Exactly. I played the beginning of the first Yakuza game.
You played 19-year-old Kiryu.
Yeah. And so there's a little bit of that, actually, but that's one of the problems. There's a little bit of that in the series. The game moves between 1985, sometimes 1995, and sometimes 2005, which is...
You mean the series?
The show.
Yeah.
It does go back and forth in time, but it keeps going back and forth in time a lot.
Why?
And because I guess that's a good question. I don't have a good answer. I feel like there is a certain difficulty in telling a story non-linearly, with flashbacks and everything. I feel like they were not, whatever purpose they had in telling the story this way, they did not nail it. And so it makes for a confusing TV show to follow. It kind of, how do I explain this? 2005, it starts mostly with the 2005 stuff with Kiryu getting out of jail. You don't know what happened. Why was he in jail? If you've played the games, you kind of have an idea because it's mostly the same idea. But he's supposed to, they show him just doing inverted push-ups against a wall, being a badass right before coming out of prison, and then, some Yakuza are gonna take care of him, but, he just suplexes them, Kiryu style. That part is kind of cool, but the action kind of falls flat. They went through the trouble of having game accurate fight moves for the actor to do. But unfortunately, the action is shot in such a way that it doesn't really have that much impact. I think that the kind of the slowdown that happens when you really, smash a guy's skull against a wall in the games goes a long way. Like they don't have that effect in the TV show, and so there's less of a oomph. But like it's good that they tried. Then like you get your first glimpse of Kamurocho, and it's pretty cool. It's very obviously CG. Like you can see that there are parts that were shot in the city that inspired Kamurocho of the games. But also like there's a lot of CG, like when sometimes like the camera will pan out, like, will go into an overhead view and like it's, CG stuff because there's also like a giant tower and shit. Like there's, I'm guessing that's from the games as well. And then you've got that one spot in the games that's, behind the cinema where there's like a fountain. Yeah. And usually like an onigiri seller or whatever, a cart. Anyway, like
the plaza.
Yeah. So that is very clearly a set. It's a well-made set. It's a very, very convincing, accurate to the game's set.
But you could have just filmed this because that is based on a real place. You could have just gone to that place.
Maybe, but like at some point, like the big climactic battle between Yakuzas it takes place there. I'm guessing it would have been prohibitively expensive to set that up in that actual place. So yeah, they have like a backlot basically where they
it would have cost nothing, so they just didn't.
Yeah, but yeah, so those parts are cool, but the most of the time though, you're not really spending time in that area. And every time that you get away from Kamurocho, like, or that you're indoors, and so you're in spaces that are not really recognizable as Yakuza locations.
Just like
from the game.
Offices.
Yeah. But yeah, you see very few offices, surprisingly enough. But the like every time that they get away from that, like the show doesn't. Feels like it doesn't have any personality, like it's missing something. I feel like the best character the show has is Kamurocho, and so they should have tried to be in Kamurocho as much as they could possibly be. Anyway,
and like that does show at least some degree of understanding of the series, because like that is part of the series. Kamurocho is a character, and as it evolved through the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, up to the 2010s. Like, that is part of the story of the series. The last Kiryu-based Yakuza, the plot is essentially the mafia's been run out of Kamurocho by the government, which is reflective of reality. The government finally said, all right, we're actually going to crack down on this shit. And so, yeah, like, they don't have money anymore. The organizations have shrunk. And, like, yeah, Kamurocho feels different because it's not full of Yakuza people running stealth brothels. But it's going to be hard to put that on a TV show because, like, you're not experiencing, you're not, for lack of a better word, you're not living it. Like, you're just kind of like walking through it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, so I don't know. I'm going to try to make this quick. Ultimately, like, I was very distracted while watching most of the show. In the end, like, I was just, like, checking social media and stuff while I should have been looking at the show. So at some point, I kind of lost the plot. Is that what it means? Anyway, like, I couldn't follow the plot. Yeah. And I just, I kind of stopped trying because I don't know, like, you spend surprisingly little time actually following Kiryu, and then you understand when you do see him in scenes, like, oh, the actor doesn't really have much of a presence. Like, no surprise that they kind of worked around that by having the story happen mostly to other characters. But that's kind of like, I don't know, at a certain point, like, when you notice that, maybe you should be like, hey, wait a minute, maybe we should have cast someone else for this role, because this guy is not really up, to the task.
So like when they announced him, he just doesn't seem like Kiryu's biggest attribute is that he's physically imposing. He's massive, and he just feels big and chiseled even when he's a kid.
Right.
And this guy just looks tall. I mean, he looks tall. He is tall.
Sure.
But he doesn't really strike you as, oh, this guy could break you.
Right. Like he definitely could beat me up. I'm not
yeah.
Yeah, no, like he's not convincing, and like whenever he's in the classic Kiryu suit, like it kind of looks too big for him or something. It's really
yes,
it's weird.
I'm looking at a picture. It's hanging on him weird.
I feel like someone should have noticed and maybe like had someone tailor it a little bit.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been that hard.
No,
because it's probably a custom suit anyway.
And the actor is not really given much to say. Like, and at some point, like there's maybe like one extended. There's one episode where you. It's really weird. I don't know if this is from the games or not, but like his whole story seems to be that he wants to be the dragon, who was a character that like someone that he saw doing like underground combat, winning a lot, beating up people, and so Kiryu is going to be a fighter, like his idol, the dragon, the guy with a big dragon on his back. Yeah.
That feels weird.
Yeah, like, it seems it's a very strange motive. And there's other stuff that's even stranger. Like the show starts out with a scene where like they set up the four main characters. You've got Kiryu,
Nishikiyama, I assume is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And like two girls who kind of disappear after a while. Well, Nishiki's sister,
yes.
and Yumi, who
the love interest.
Yeah. But so it introduces them like they're going to do a heist, and you have not really any context, but they're going to do a heist. And so like you see like they introduce them like Kiryu, like they don't say like this is Kiryu, they say like the driver. And I'm just like, wait, what? The driver? Kiryu's like I was like, okay, this is cool. Like maybe a heist, like that's exciting. I like to see heist movies, but like yeah, so it uses codes from the heist movie genre, and like Kiryu's the driver, and then like so and so is like I forget already because it never comes back again. They're never gonna do another heist. They do a heist on like Yakuza money while they're kids, actually, in 1985, and then they have to basically work for the Yakuza. Otherwise, the Yakuza were going to kill them, basically.
Wow.
It's very, very dumb, but also like this whole thing, the way that it starts already sets up the fact that the people making the show had no idea what direction they wanted to go. I feel like you can't promise a big heist and like introduce your characters as the lookout, the driver, the this and that. And then not have that be like a core part of the show.
Right.
That's how you fucking introduce them.
I mean, go ahead.
No, well, since when is Kiryu the driver anyway?
When he was a taxi driver in Yakuza 5 after he retired. Yeah, no,
okay.
There's no way Kiryu at this point in his career could operate a car. He was an idiot. I think the issue might be that they don't want to represent like how Kiryu actually became a member of the organized crime, which is he grew up in an orphanage run by an organized crime lord and just thought that shit was cool. So yeah, like you make up something that sounds less like your character thinks running a crime ring is cool. And it's like, oh, he wants to be a fighter. Mm-hmm. They're pressed into Yakuza service. Nah, he chose to be a member of the Yakuza. His adopted father's like, don't do that.
Yeah,
it's bad.
No, that is part of the TV show. Like
okay,
he is. Yeah, they did grow up in an orphanage by a former Yakuza, and like there's the whole thing. He does seize the opportunity after being caught doing the heist. He seizes that opportunity to say like, I want to do underground fights for the Yakuza. It's like, okay, apparently that was an option.
Yeah,
He's gonna
didn't
pay
know
back
that was
his
a
debt.
career path we offered.
Yeah. So it's very dumb.
Let me talk to HR and see if that's a title we have. There's the openings in the underground fight ring.
Yeah, so this show doesn't really capture what makes the games interesting, and so it's not really a good show in its own right. Like I also watched a little bit earlier this year. What's the Michael Mann produced Tokyo Vice on HBO.
Yeah.
Not a great show, but more interesting and more, I don't know, exciting than what this ended up to be. So I'd rather start the second season of Tokyo Vice that I haven't watched yet than seeing more Yakuza, I guess. And that's kind of damning if you've seen Tokyo Vice.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Yeah, it I don't know. It always felt like the doomed adaptation because like part of what makes the plots work isn't. I'm ignoring all the silly shit.
Mm-hmm.
Is that they'll just let stuff simmer for a really long time. Like they'll let stuff simmer for a really long time, and Kiryu is so improbably a good guy that it's sort of you can get away with it with the artifice of this is a computer game. But like once you put real people in his ridiculous he's a good guy in a bad world thing, it just becomes harder and harder to
suspend your disbelief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, they shouldn't have hired a fucking model to play Kiryu. I'm sorry. He's not an attractive man. Like that's part of the point. His animal magnetism is why he attracts people, not because he's traditionally handsome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like American movie TV producers see him in the street, and they're just like, "This is the man we need." You exude a sort of aura of danger.
Right. Yeah, exactly. This
guy,
is the man we've been looking for.
Yeah, like if this happened in this show, like you would turn it off immediately because you'd be like, this is stupid. This guy doesn't have an ounce of aura of danger.
Yeah. That's got to be hard to find in an actor. Like, we don't want an actor that's that handsome. We want an actor that's only marginally handsome, but also large. And not just tall, but like broad. And looks very strong. Like, this guy is 6'1".
You don't want DiCaprio, you want Tom Hardy, basically.
Yeah, exactly. You want Japanese Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
That's it exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But also like needs to be able to seem like a tender guy. Like that's the other thing. Like, yes, he's in this space, but he himself is generally speaking a very nice person. So like finding that balance in an actor is, I totally get, probably next to impossible. But
it's too bad that this couldn't have been made back in the days of like the 60s, 70s when you could turn James Bond Japanese. Like maybe you could have just turned Tom Hardy Japanese.
Oh, I mean, we could go find I'm sure there's notes on the excellent cosmetic work that was done back then. We could figure it out. Yeah. Although Kiryu himself is not particularly Japanese looking features because they just went to make his face as gaunt as they could, I think. But yeah, like this felt like it was a tough ask to adapt. Although I know they've adapted this thing before. It just always felt like they were setting the bar really hard for themselves.
Yeah. And they did not pull it off. I'm sad to say.
No. Well, it is what it is. Amazon adaptions have we'll call them dicey history. Mm-hmm. Looking at you, Rings of Power. Looking directly at you. But hey, the Fallout one's good. Fallout's out there. You should go watch that instead.
Mm-hmm.
Thumbs up. I don't even like Fallout. So there you go. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Well, we're going to... Oh, actually, I'm going to ask, John, officially, do you have anything you want to talk about?
I don't really. I mean, I've just, I've kind of been going through the backlog. I have been playing a lot of Skyrim. I'm taking another crack at Skyrim on PS5 this time. But it's funny because I just felt like it was on sale. So I was like, you know what? PS5 is literally the only platform. This is where my mind works. It's literally the only platform I don't have Skyrim on, right?
Damn it.
So I picked it up and I started playing it again, but I kind of stepped back a little bit and I said, okay, all the times I've
Why am I doing this?
All the times I've bounced off this game, why has that been? And it's pretty much because I discovered it's been really because the melee combat in those games sucks. It's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was always playing melee characters. So I said, what if I actually just did a thief style character that was all stealth, and so I did that, and it is much more enjoyable, and I now cannot put the game down because my character. So I'm focusing on archery, stealth, lockpicking, pickpocket, speech, kind of all of that sort of stuff for like a thief kind of character, and the game is much, much more enjoyable because eventually you get to the point where you just pretty much like crouch down, enemies can't see you, and you just sneak around in the shadows, and when they turn their back on you, you just one-shot them with an arrow to the back, and you just do that and sneak through everything. You can pickpocket anybody, you can lockpick anything, and so you can just move through the game world so much more smoothly. You don't have to worry about the goofy first-person combat and all of that stuff where the targeting is non-existent, really. You're just pretty much button mashing. You don't have to do any of that stuff. All that stuff that I didn't like. I always liked the game world and all that kind of stuff and the lore and all that stuff, but just the combat, which is obviously huge.
That's a lot of the game.
Yeah, it's a lot of the game. And also, magic never... yes, you can kind of do the same sort of range combat with magic, but it just doesn't feel as good. But yeah, so finally I think like this is kind of the archetype for a character in probably all Elder Scrolls games that I will use going forward. So yeah, I've just been playing the heck out of it, and there's just so much silly stuff in Skyrim. So yeah, so I've gotten sucked into that, against all odds, I would say. On Switch, I've been playing a little bit of Stardew Valley. I don't know why I felt like playing it, but I've just been playing a little bit of Stardew Valley. Just for the heck of it. I'm in a very kind of like comfort food kind of game mood. So
understandable.
Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, I mean, really, I think, I think things are really gonna be kind of slow for me over the next, month or so. But I mean, definitely it's gonna pick up in the next couple of months with, Monster Hunter Wilds coming out. Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition coming out. At some point, we'll see when Metroid Prime Beyond comes out. So there's plenty of stuff out there.
I forgot that was its subtitle. It's been so long.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I thought was interesting was I was thinking, when am I going to get some more Nintendo game vouchers? And so, Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, actually, you can use a game voucher on that, and so I'm waiting for them to throw Metroid Prime Beyond into that, and then I'll get a couple of game vouchers, I think.
They last a year, and they do shoot you an email a month out from it getting ready to expire, so that's good.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that I'm going to wait a little bit because I think what I'll do is I'll probably pick them up in January, because that way you get the Christmas releases in there.
Yes.
The mistake I made with these vouchers was I bought them in October, so I had to use them. So
we bought them for Mario. Yes.
Yeah, we bought them for Mario, and so they expired around like October 15th. So yeah,
I can't remember what I used it on. I used mine for Zelda, which works out fine.
Yeah, I did the same, which was okay. That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So my planning on vouchers is I'm going to wait to see if I can get any deals on eShop cards.
Yeah,
to get money.
Yep.
And then use that to buy vouchers. But hey, one of the games I bought vouchers for was Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom is a $70 game. There's not that many of those. Well, guess what? It's not right now, because Nintendo announced their Black Friday deals, and Tears of the Kingdom is leading the list with its first major sale on the eShop. Now you can retail that's been on sale before, but it is currently listed at $49.99. It's $20 off.
That's a
Super
good
Mario
discount.
Maker 2 is $40. Yoshi's Crafted World, Xenoblade, Chronicles Definitive Edition are basically $40, and Fire Emblem Three Houses. Again,
Bayonetta Origins is on there, and so is Bayonetta. Yep, they're on there too.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of other stuff that's not Nintendo on sale. I picked up the Phoenix Wright series that is Apollo and the 2 3DS games. Because that one's on sale now. So which means the only ones I don't have are the Edgeworth ones, which I was hoping would go on sale this time, but did not. But that's okay. They will go on sale. It is Capcom. It always happens. They will be on sale.
Yep.
But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on sale besides Nintendo stuff. But that is, hey, if you still don't have Tears of the Kingdom, it will never be cheaper than this digitally. Like this is its floor. It's 30% off. And that's basically what it's going to be forever, as its floor. So it will be in this sale again next year, almost certainly. But hey, go get it. Unicorn Overlord's 40% off. If you haven't played that, I might recommend it. Just as a thought, go take a look. Who could say? Maybe you'll love it. The Xenoblade games are 30% off. Bayonetta 3 and Bayonetta Origins are both 30% off. SMT5 Vengeance is 40% off. Like there's stuff out there. Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, if you somehow still haven't bought it with the DLC, is 30% off for like the 40th time because this game has been in every sale ever.
Yeah, but I mean, I would think that they would add more games to this sale for Black Friday. I would assume. This seems like
this
small
is the
list. That is
they
the list.
They sent out the press release. This is the list.
Wow,
yeah,
that seems like a small list to me.
I mean, it's decent size. I mean, it's not just their stuff though. It's other publishers too. Like they don't.
Yeah.
They very deliberately don't crowd out other publishers. So like Capcom has a shitload. Devolver has a bunch. Axis has a solid selection. Capcom Fighting Bundle is $19.99 right now.
Yeah.
That is dramatically on sale. A Great Ace Attorney Chronicles is $15. That is a steal. Monster Hunter Rise Deluxe with all the DLC is $15.
Yeah, that's a joke. It's really good.
Ghost Trick's $14. Go play fucking Ghost Trick, you fucking cowards. Go do it.
Yeah.
Go do it.
Yeah,
it's good.
I was going through all the PlayStation deals, and the one game that I laughed at was Exoprimal.
Oh my god.
I mean, I was like, oh right, this is a Capcom game, right? And then you watch the trailer and you're like, this is bullshit. Who greenlit this? It's like you're in space fighting dinosaurs, and like I'm just like, what? It's on sale for like $14 or something. Like no one bought that game.
Exoprimal, the game where everyone said, Capcom, did you forget you have the Dino Crisis brand? What the fuck? Why did you make another game about fighting dinosaurs in space?
Right. Yeah.
You absolute idiots.
Man, that trailer, I was like, woo, wow, I can see why this is on sale so deeply discounted.
Yes. There's a bunch of good stuff in the Devolver digital sale. So, obviously the deals aren't as big because a lot of those games are usually like $6 anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose we'll be doing our usual watching. I think from what I saw on PlayStation, they're going to have the annual passes for PlayStation Plus on sale, 30% off, I think, and then we'll see our usual Xbox Ultimate Game Pass, Vigil.
Yeah, the same site we used last year already has it on sale.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to announce it. I'm going to make the audience try to figure it out themselves. I'm not going to give away the hint before we've had a chance to buy it ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some good stuff out there. So hey, if you can get discounts on Switch eShop cards, you can then buy your tickets even cheaper. Oh, big sale. Pups and Purrs Animal Hospital, 50% off. That's it.
Sweet.
Get to it. Go buy it. I can't believe that's on this listing. God damn it. All right, well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about our next retroactive, so please stay tuned. We are back, and it's time for us to set up our next new business. Retroactive. I already fucked up the intro. It's fine. We haven't done these in a while, and that's why I screwed up the intro. And I know we kind of had the next game picked out, but Greg reminded us helpfully that this is today, actually, for another 16 minutes, is the anniversary of the release of the DS, the 20th anniversary of the release of the DS. So it seems only appropriate that we do a retroactive that focuses on Nintendo's little clamshell system, but not the GBA SP. The dual screen system with a touchscreen. Because it was a unique offering that introduced the idea of touch-based gaming and some other concepts. I mean, not introduced. Those things did exist, but really pushed them into the mainstream. And yeah, I mean, it's also basically dates back to this show's origins. So it would be interesting to go back and look over the, let's say, expansive library and try to pick a game that we think would be a good representation for the system. So we're going to do this one on a relatively quick turnaround. I'm thinking we're probably going to release this episode during the holidays at the end of December. So we could take a vacation as well. We'll probably record it ahead of time. So we might only have 4 or 5 weeks to play through and record. So, we're going to kind of talk through it. How we've set this up is we each went through the DS library and picked 2 games that we're going to submit, to the group collectively. And then we will sort of collectively try to settle on the one that we are going to pick. The metrics that we're going to use for that, I don't know. We'll kind of figure it out as we go along. That's usually how we do it. There's lots of different ways to dice this up and figure out what's the best representation. So we'll go from there, and you're going to get to hear us deliberate over it. So I'm going to give the first game that I want to recommend, and in no small part driven by its availability, I would like to recommend Ghost Trick, even though I just played it a year ago. This is my favorite DS game. It makes extensive use of the touchscreen, although it's available on Switch. You can buy it now. It's on sale. You should play Ghost Trick. I don't think this is the winning choice because I just played it a year ago, and I suspect other people have as well. But I put it out there because I believe it deserves to be there. I know I just did what Guillaume talked about. It's like, here's a game that I think's a good one. Don't do it. But,
well, I mean, it's a very obvious choice. I mean, it's one of the best games in the library. So
yeah, and it does. It actually uses the hardware features in a way that's not stupid. You could make the case for Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass. We already did Spirit Tracks, and we obviously spent a lot of time talking about Phantom Hourglass during that retroactive. So it's a game that uses the touchscreens in a non-minigame collection sort of way. All right, John, give me one of your games.
I would nominate, I think I kind of put it up there with Ghost Trick in the sense that I don't think that it would actually really be a good choice. I would say Bangai-O Spirits just because it's so unique. It really uses the hardware in a very, very strange way, being able to...
I thought you were going to say it in a good way, and I was going to be like, no.
It's very strange. It's a very unique game. A shooter.
Well, that whole weird thing about sharing levels with the modem noises, that doesn't get taken down when GameSpy goes down. So, they had it figured out. It's the reality of it.
Yeah.
I'm looking how much Bangai-O runs for.
Yeah, it's
less
probably...
than I expected.
Its availability is very questionable. I mean, I have a copy, which is obviously biased. But yeah,
it's got the advantage of I also own a copy.
Mm-hmm. I do not own a copy of Bangai-O Spirits. It is. I would call it marginally available.
Yeah, how much is it on eBay?
$30 for what is almost certainly a bootleg DS cart.
Mm-hmm.
$40 for complete inbox.
Yeah.
More if you want it sealed, obviously.
Yeah. So not
also,
that.
I didn't realize.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much they make it look like a Gundam in the Japanese box. Wow. How did they not get sued? How did they not get sued?
Yeah, it's funny. It goes back, I think, to the N64 version box art is very similar in that way. Whereas, definitely the American DS box it seems to be obscuring that a little bit more, which is kind of strange in a sense, like you said, because wouldn't the sensitivity about that be greater in Japan than it would in the US? But I guess also marketing it as being somehow Gundam adjacent, which is questionable considering, like, you're absolutely tiny on screen. I mean, it's kind of a joke, I guess, like, of just like, oh, you're this giant robot, you are minuscule on the screen, and there's just all this crazy shit coming around you. But it's I mean, I can't imagine there were that many copies out there, but I bought my own copy and used that to review it back in 2008 for the site. So that's 3 of us.
I'm looking at Bakuretsu Muteki Bangayo for the Nintendo 64, and they that is some off-brand Gundam shit right there.
Yeah, that's it. They really kind of went into that pretty hard there. So it sort of struck me when I got the N64 game long time after it was probably somewhere around 2011 or something. Shockingly decent price for a very nice condition copy, because you think and I'm sure there aren't that many copies of Bangai Spirits for DS in circulation. No. There are hardly any of N64 Bangai. It only released in Japan. It wasn't, the N64 wasn't that popular in Japan. They really didn't make very many copies of that.
It came out in 1999.
Yeah, so it was kind of clear at that point. The writing was kind of on the wall. What kind of machine, the N64, how popular it was, and the kinds of people that were actually, owned it and bought games for it. And it was pretty much, your kind of Nintendo fans, and maybe people like 3D platformers and 3D games in general. So something that was essentially a 2D game. Yeah, I mean, it had very limited appeal. So, yeah, that is probably the biggest bargain I think I've ever got, of buying games way after they came out. I mean, sometimes you can buy something at the time and it ends up being ridiculously rare. That's one thing. But when it's actually already, a long time after, production has stopped, to get something that reasonable that was a pretty good result.
Nice. Greg.
Well, I kind of feel obliged to mention mine as a pair, because it is almost like I'm trying to convey the breadth of the DS in a single pairing, which is, maybe doesn't mean that either one is quite the best choice, again, to talk it down before I actually raise it in each case, because maybe there's a Goldilocks option out there so far somewhere. But I think, first of all, you've got to consider, what did the DS do? Well, it kind of opened the gaming sort of market up to different kinds of players that were looking for different kinds of experiences, kind of brought them into the mainstream and made them, commercially viable for a time anyway, at least before, the combination of piracy and smartphones just kind of poisoned the well for such things.
Right.
On dedicated gaming devices anyway. But the first one I'm going to recommend, I think, is, I would go with the first of the DS Professor Layton games, Curious Village, mainly because that is just the farthest away and the most dim in my memories. And again, the idea, that a series like this, that's sort of marrying together, a kind of adventure game with logic puzzles, and all with this sort of, Triplets of Belleville inspired kind of presentation and all that. It's this really interesting sort of alchemy, this combination of kind of inspirations and elements,
yes.
and to form this thing that is, you could imagine like, oh yeah, that's a really cool thing. But what's even more cool about it is that it landed. It found an audience, not just in Japan, but outside of Japan, in America and in Europe, and it kept going. And we got, another 3 on the DS alone, another 2 on the 3DS, and then, with the Latent Versus right, and we've had, the Catriel thing that wasn't too hot, apparently. But also, it's coming back. Supposedly, finally in 2025, New World of Steam,
maybe
it's coming back. So I feel like there's a pretty decent case for Layton to be made. But if we want to go all the other way, if we want to say, what about the old fogies? And I would include myself in that, even though I was about 20 when the DS came out. So, half my current age. Then it was, I'd say, the people that wanted old school experiences, that wanted things that was going to challenge them. And this may not be something that loads of people have, so it's not a great candidate on all counts, but it feels like it's a little bit kind of fallen through the cracks now. Contra 4.
Oh.
This is, definitely a challenging game. I think more so than the Castlevanias that were out at the time. But it also feels a little bit more precious than those Castlevania games, which are very nice. And we've got the collection for those, the Dominus collection that just came out. But, obviously you'd already had 3 similar games on GBA. With Contra,
right.
There were a bunch of Contra, games of various types and things. Some of them like more like 3D, or a bunch of different developers. This was way forward, kind of in collaboration with Konami, but it really did feel like a return to, proper Contra gameplay and sensibilities that you hadn't really seen in action since probably, Hardcore on the Genesis, which at that time, would have been 14 years old, I think, because this was around about 2008, I want to say.
Something like that.
You've got really nice way forward sprite art. You've got, kind of the music is pretty strong, kind of remixes of a lot of stuff from various points in the series. And, it did use that dual screen real estate to bring a kind of Contra arcade style vertical orientation to a home Contra game. And, it's probably not all roses with that. That, maybe there's sometimes when you kind of think, well, but how much of benefit is this or whatever. That's one of the things to be interested to kind of explore, going back to it, for the first time in a while. But yeah, obviously the downside of it being relatively inaccessible, both from the fact that it has not been republished and also that it is just pretty damn hard, as I recall. I can understand if this doesn't carry the day.
No, that's fair. I do want to thank you for helping me with my list, because I was down to 3, but you just took Mysterious/Curious Village for me, so now I have a free slot. I'm safe. All right, Guillaume.
Yeah.
Give me one of your games.
So this would be, I think, pretty interesting to talk about, although, yeah, WarioWare DIY.
Oh.
Basically, at some point, the WarioWare team, as they were making WarioWare games, realized, I think, am I misremembering this? Like, they realized, like, well, making them is pretty fun. Maybe we can make a game about making
pretty
micro
much,
games. Yeah. And so, like, I own this. Haven't really touched it all that much. Like a year before I went to E3 with Nintendo World Report, I went with a couple of forum-going people who were, actually game, worked in games, and they counterfeited some credentials for me, so so I could get into E3. So that was pretty neat. But I just remember making like a very simple mini game, showing it to them, and they gave me constructive criticism, and I was just like, screw you! I just wanted you to tell me that it was good, and so I stopped.
Nice.
So I'm ready. I feel like I've grown as a person. I can perhaps accept criticism better, and I can maybe make better mini games at this point.
The only challenge with it now, obviously, is there's no way to share these anymore, which stinks.
Is there really?
It should have gone with the modem noises.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. You're right. I can imagine how many modem noises it would have taken to share an entire fucking game.
Or just a really, really long password.
It's true. Yeah, it's like 18,000 characters. It'll be fine.
So yeah, that's definitely something that makes it less appealing, and also the fact that like there was this whole connection also with the WiiWare version of this, which let anyone download your games and play them. And part of the marketing was that they got several indie game developers to make micro games for them. And,
correct.
And yeah, so you could go and download. I forget these people's names. Didn't like the Super Meat Boy guys?
Yeah, I think
a
so.
Game, and yeah, the Bit Trip Runner guys, and the VVV. Anyway, like so yeah. Now that's not really a thing anymore. But from what I remember, like it's a good, learn how to make games tool. So, and like I can't think of a lot more games that use the DS capabilities better.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
It's not that rare. Like it is maybe
I was looking at that,
more.
Right?
Yeah, like on eBay, on Canadian eBay, like you can get it for under 40. It's I think it's cheaper than Contra 4 actually, which is not that expensive either. I've been checking as games got mentioned, and nothing is like shocking to me so far.
Okay, well that's fair. Okay, I wrote that one down. I guess it's back around to me. I was thinking about Ace Attorney has a collection. It's all out there. I love Ace Attorney. I think it is one of the seminal games of the DS. But it's not the one I want to do. I want to do another game that was an adventure game on DS that is less well known. And that game is Touch Detective, specifically the first one, although you could do the second one. They're very short. Recently came out on a collection on Switch.
Right.
I remember really loving both of these games. They're weird, irreverent. They are adventure games, but they're not like point and clicks. Like the part of the reason I'm a little reticent to recommend the first Ace Attorney game is it in particular does devolve into point and clickiness. The series gets better with that, but that was literally their first stab at it. So yeah, I figured this would be something that's less likely to get nominated by anybody else, so I'd put it out there. And I might also own it. I don't even know if I still own it. I assume I still own that game. And 2.5. But yeah, that's my second one. John, what is your second game?
This is a real tough one because I feel like there's a lot of games. I feel like there's several games to me that are, when I think about the DS, I really think about, there was definitely, I think we talked about this last week a little bit, where there was kind of a pivotal point when the DS came out. There was really nothing out for it aside from Ping Pals, which was the big killer app.
Yeah, the game, the Ping Pals.
The game. But I think there was a certain point, so where there was a batch of games came out that were all really, really good. Like, I'm thinking, like, Kirby Canvas Curse came out, Meteos came out, I think Portrait of Ruin came out, Metroid Prime Pinball came out. I think they all came out around the same time, roughly. But I would say Retro Game Challenge, just because It's very unique. I don't know how available it is, however. That's what I would worry about.
Not very.
Yeah, not very. But I think it's one that I don't think I ever owned it. I haven't really played it, but it's one I've always wanted to play, and it's a very unique concept with the tie-in to the show in Japan, going through these sort of remakes of different retro games. I think it would be pretty cool, and probably there'd be a lot to discuss beyond just the contents of the game itself.
It is not it's not super expensive.
Yeah.
But it's not super cheap either. But yes, it is an interesting game.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at my copy, so that makes me happy. Greg already gave us a second game, Guillaume.
Did we? I feel like I shouldn't be the one to mention this because it kind of goes without saying. I feel like Elite Beat Agents is one of the defining games.
I thought about it too.
On the system. Yep. To me, anyway, we'll see the discussion, but it almost feels like it should be like the default choice. Like it is such a kind of emblematic game for the DS.
Yeah, like I'll speak to, when we get around to it, I'll speak to why I passed on it.
But yeah, like the last time that I tried to play it, I realized that I was getting too old, or that I had lost all my muscle memory, and I was this is not
part of it.
Yeah, this is not very fun. I'm not nearly as good at this game as I was just like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, whenever it is that I last tried it.
That was part of my thinking.
Yeah, it was humbling and it was painful, and so I'm not sure if
humbled.
So there's that. I'm not sure. Like I'd be afraid of what I discover about the inevitable march towards death, or anyway. But it is, like great presentation. Just the how impressive it was back then that it could cram that many anime scenes and that much music into a DS cartridge. Many
bad covers.
Yeah, well, they were okay covers. And like
Some
a lot of
them
people will remember the Christmas themed song in there, and just how exactly. It's kind of infamous for that, right? Like you're just having fun. It's just these wacky situations, and it hits you with that one scene where it's like, oh my god, this is so fucking sad. Why,
why are you doing this?
Yeah. So for all these reasons, I think Elite Beat Agents has to be considered. And again, like I looked up how much it is. It's less than I would have thought.
They made a lot of copies.
Yeah. I own it.
Yeah,
they
pushed it pretty well, didn't they?
Yeah. So I'll give a couple games that I ended up not including. So they're not eligible, but Radiant Historia, which I think is,
I considered it as well.
An absolutely phenomenal game. I mean, stunningly good. But couple factors. One, it never came out in Europe on DS. It did come out on 3DS in Europe. But it was in the twilight of the 3DS, so I imagine a lot of people missed it. They didn't make that many copies of the DS version, so it's not cheap. They didn't make that many copies of the 3DS version. It's also probably not cheap. I adore that game and think you should play it, but it's also very long. And in the late game, it gets quite difficult. But it's a classic that isn't widely recognized as being a classic just because of availability. I also considered the Beyonce endorsed Rhythm Heaven on DS. Because if you don't remember, Beyonce was part of the ad campaign for that back when she was affordable to Nintendo. She is not affordable to Nintendo at this point.
Sure, but it probably wasn't cheap either.
No.
It is kind of mind-blowing to think of like rhythm, the original Rhythm to Goku in being something that couldn't even get localized, and then a couple of years later, whatever it was, like they're doing ads with Beyonce, for a localized version, worldwide. But yeah, it's kind of a bit of a awkward fit. They were trying to kind of sell it as part of their, Touch Generations, like the bigger outreach kind of thing. And it's just like that's a pretty hardcore game in a lot of ways.
It's very hard. And that was part of the reason because the fucking, not Flockstep's what it evolved into. The one where you have Lockstep. Yeah. Fuck Lockstep forever. I hate that game. I hate it so much. It's misery. Flockstep was the bird parody of it they put in the 3DS one, I think.
I think it was a Wii one.
Okay. Yeah, It sucks. It sucks so bad. Flockstep was better, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, that one got cut because it may have literally just been cut because of fuck Lockstep.
It's again, one of the problems for me has always been it's in a vacuum. For some reason that was the only installment that had ever been. Right. I think there's a lot to commend about it. It's still got a lot of those nice qualities, but it does just using the touchscreen the way it does. And this all like tapping and flicking basically being kind of two types of interactions as opposed to just A and B on the Game Boy Advance. It just introduces this little bit of imprecision that doesn't mesh that well with the very precise, in truth, nature of the gameplay. They're kind of almost trying to stay away from highlighting that the way that some rhythm games would, like with note highways or, the very granular grading of what you're doing. It's trying to ignore that. It's trying to glide over that aspect of a lot of rhythm games with the way it kind of does things. But the reality of it is there's a precision to it, and that kind of input mechanism doesn't fit it. It's still, it's not like it's entirely unfit for purpose or anything.
No, it's still very good.
But, the others for me are a bit better by virtue of the not having that problem. And then also, kind of on Wii and 3DS, you've got better audio quality, more elaborate presentation and so on.
Yeah. And then the last one that I was strongly considering was 999, which I really, really like. I already mentioned why I didn't nominate Phoenix Wright, but 999, which I really like. It's a very good adventure game. It is available on newer systems now. They've re-released it multiple times. I just think it is going to potentially turn some people off because it is fairly violent. It is willing to be gross and gory and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know that it's going to be super fun to talk about. Because the twists are so insane, and they're not insane in a latent way where it's like, can you believe the entire city was insert thing here? It's more insane than that somehow, in a way that, it could be fun to talk about, but I don't know. Everybody would have to beat it, and that's not a short ask. It's a pretty long game.
Well, and also, I played Virtue's Last Reward, which is the sequel that was on 3DS, but doesn't that have more kind of quality of life type stuff in terms of making it easier to going back and going back to kind of nodes, branching points and whatever you want to call them, in the narrative where it's like, okay, well, you could have chosen something differently, and that how that affects where you end up at the end and all that kind of it gave you more control over more easily okay, let's go back in the kind of timeline of the narrative and see what happens if I chose differently. I don't think it was that convenient with the DS games.
I want to say they added it in the later ports, but yeah, in the DS games you had to replay the game. And so I replayed that game, the front of that game, 7 times to get through all the. Now you can fast forward it, and I want to say it has a really good fast forward feature where it knows when you hit text that's new and stops the fast forward, just to give you that indicator of okay, you need to pay attention now. But yeah, just being able to jump around in VLR made everything a lot easier. But I do think it's a game that was underappreciated in its time, although I advocated for it in its time, that people should be aware of. It's really neat and really good, and it's available. You should go play it. But I didn't nominate it. Those are my my passes. Anybody else have any passes they want to mention?
Sure. Well, I have mostly, like the games that I still have, that I still own because I don't want to have to buy a new game. But Tetris DS, I thought, well, like there's Tetris is big right now with the release of Tetris Forever, but it's a version that Tetris Forever doesn't preserve, Tetris DS. Which was like kind of full of new modes. Well, 6 different modes, it says on the cover, and also like tons of Nintendo content. Like they were really going with the fan service with the the pixel versions of Mario and Donkey Kong and Samus and Link, and you had some interesting modes like the battle mode or the push mode, it was called, where you would see your screen at the top where you would, play your game of Tetris, but you had someone inverted, like below you. You had your opponent playing their game of Tetris, and like as you were clearing lines, like it would be a tug of war, basically. Like they would, or the opposite of a tug of war, they would be pushing you up, or you would be pushing them down.
Right.
Yeah, like tons of really clever little enhancements, I guess, to Tetris. I don't know if there would be that much to talk about, but like I feel like it was a significant release back then.
It was a big release. I don't know how available it is. I know they didn't make that many copies.
Yeah, but I mean, like I got this not too long ago at a used game store. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe.
Yeah, I think there was a period where it got up in price a bit, but it's probably just when they first kind of stopped printing it, if you like, you know what I mean? Like, because, I think for a production run, there probably were quite a lot of copies, but yeah, obviously they had to license the Tetris name, and then and they presumably only licensed it to produce those cards for a limited period of time. And once they stopped, and people couldn't get a new copy very easily, the price spiked. But now that all DS production is very much a thing of the relatively distant past, the bottom line is there's quite a lot of copies out there, in people's hands, circulating, probably through, eBay and whatever else. So, it's, my sort of, experience with it is it's not incredibly difficult to get. I did get it at some point. I can't remember how many years ago it was now, because it passed me by originally, and so when I saw it for a very reasonable price in good condition, I thought, I'll have that. So I don't know how much the situation's changed in the intervening years, but it's probably not prohibitive.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I look at it and it's 30. It's not too bad. Another one that I passed is Rings of Fate, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. Just because, again, it's a game that I own, but I don't know if I actually want to do a retroactive on this. I bought
Is that the one that was also on Wii?
I believe it is, and it's one that I got when there was like a deep discount on Square Enix's online store. And with the shipping, it was not that much of a savings. But I got 2 copies because I thought I'm going to play this with Karen. And I think that the multiplayer on this particular game was not what I expected. I think that it was like it's basically discrete missions or challenges. And you're not playing the actual full solo adventure with a co-op, So... yeah, it was not very fun, and I believe that I talked about it at some point on an episode, and like I described a cat herding game, literally. The mission was to run after cats and throw them into pens. It was weird. It was not good. So I'm leaving that out. But I do, for some reason, I still kept the cartridge around because, I don't know. I fooled myself into thinking I'm going to play it someday.
Nice. Anybody else got any passes they want to?
Yeah, I mean,
shout out?
I mentioned a bunch. I mean, Kirby Canvas Curse, just because I feel like that's well-worn territory by now.
Well, we kind of, it wasn't explicitly for that game, but when we did the Wii U game, as a retroactive, we talked about it a fair bit. But yeah, I mean, it's an important, like you said, it's that important kind of tipping point where that was with the actually kind of like, oh, these are like actually good games coming out now thing that in 2005.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal, but it's just something that we've probably talked about enough. But I mean, there's other I don't know if any of the other Kirby stuff would tease at all.
I thought about Mass Attack, but it doesn't really use the DS features that much. Like, it's because it's such a late DS game.
It uses them a bit.
You flick the flick the touchscreen a lot.
Yeah.
Surely it uses the mic at some point. It's been a while. I wouldn't mind replaying that.
Is that you actually have to do the Kirby shouting into the mic to clear the screen of enemies?
Who knows?
See, also, like I said, Meteos, Metroid Prime Pinball, just because I don't think they'd be really that. I think they wouldn't be that great to talk about. Scourge Hive is another one too, which I really like that game, but again, it's more of kind of an isometric sort of action platformer, so really not too much to talk about there. So those would be mine.
A semi-Metroidvania-ish kind of game back when those were more rare than they are today.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And just like they hadn't been that, in the end, we had a lot of them on DS. They're not from Metroid, but notably enough. But yeah, you did end up getting quite a few of those on there. I mean, as I'm sure you could guess, like we've done quite a few in the past, haven't we? Like Henry Hatsworth is, kind of an interesting DS game that tried to marry, kind of Mega Man X style action game with a puzzle game on the bottom and all that. But we did that as a retroactive already, so
we did.
You'll remember things like that.
All right. Well, let's start talking about trying to I'll go through the full list just because I have it written down. The list is Ghost Trick, Bangai-O Spirits, Curious/Mysterious Village. That's Professor Layton. Contra 4.
I thought that was Curious Village everywhere. I thought they hadn't got down to... But having said that, my copy that I still have is North American, so I could... It's not based on that.
I thought it was...
so I could be right. I could be just, kind of misremembering that because I had an American copy, but there you
go. Maybe it is... Maybe that was the name that came up for it somewhere else. Let's see. Europe is called Curious Village. Okay, so maybe not. I don't know where maybe Mysterious Village is the literal translation of the Japanese one.
The Japanese one could be, yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. All right. So, we'll just call it Curious Village then. Perfect. Because the village is Saint Mystère. Great. Yeah, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Contra 4, WarioWare DIY, Touch Detective, Retro Game Challenge, and Elite Beat Agents. I'm trying to figure out the best way to handle this besides just like, I'm going to advocate for mine. So I guess the question would be, part of me really wants to do DIY, but part of me also worries, like, without the ability to share, are we going to be able to enjoy it? I'm certainly open to it. Like, I like the idea of talking about the process of creating. You did it. How is that process?
Yeah, I mean, like, it just walked you through a lot of the basics of game design from what I remember. But, like, that was, I don't know, 10, 15 years. Yeah, it was at least 12 years ago. 13, maybe 13 or 14 years ago.
Whatever.
It's been a while.
A long time. Yes.
Yeah. So it tells you like, well, create a sprite, create like, maybe like a dozen action, like, so you want to do like a crude animation, but also like it taught you about kind of the logic of like, well, okay, so if this happened, then, what do you want to happen? And that's about as far as I got. I made a little guy who was jumping from a plane, I believe, and you had to tap to open the parachute. I forget the details. I'll have some fun actually discovering if the game is still in the memory, what game it is that I made. And maybe I'll realize that, maybe it did need some constructive criticism.
Hopefully the DS internal batteries aren't dying. That would suck.
I will say, like, maybe we won't be able to play each other's games, but something that's around now that wasn't really as widespread then is how easy it is to share video. So, like, I think we each can just take our phones and point it at our DSs and show how, like, the game that we made and show us playing them.
Sure.
Don't even need, to create a YouTube account. You can just go into Discord and, like we
put the video in there.
Yeah. So that's one way that we could get over that hurdle.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That was just my immediate thought on that one. I don't know. Does anybody else have one that they want to ask a question about? I'm not going to advocate for Ghost Trick, and here's my reasoning. I think it is maybe one of the most original games on the DS. I think it makes really nice use of DS features. I think it is a phenomenal game, and it's like beyond its originality. It is just a phenomenal game. I think it has a fun story. It's got good characters. It's got awesome art. The animation is, is amazing. It's available because it is, Capcom made that re-release. I just worry that people played it too recently because of the re-release. It came out about a year and some change ago. But I am willing to be dissuaded from that. But that's my reason my knock against it right now. Because we did, it seemed to do okay because we had been yelling at people to play Ghost Trick for a decade, and it seems like some of them actually did. Mm-hmm. Conversely, that might make them more willing to participate because they have played it recently. But, it's been, what was that? Was that early 2023, I think? So it's been a little while.
Yeah, I don't have any strong objection against it, but I'm not super excited either.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like a lot of these games, like I'm not against them, but a lot of them I've played before. I've played them all before. Yeah, so I don't know which way to vote.
Yeah, that's going to be harder on a system where the games just aren't readily available. So it's going to be less likely for us to pick something we haven't played. Like I have no desire to go back into the Contra 4 mines.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, like, so the games that I feel like I haven't played enough and I need to give a second chance to are Bangayo, WarioWare DIY, and maybe Contra 4, except that from what I remember, like, there's a reason I got rid of that game without finishing it. Like, maybe I was not enjoying Contra 4 all that much, and wasn't there like an easy mode and like you get to not play all the levels and then if you play normal, it's drastically more difficult?
I think so. I think it was basically like there was precedent for this. I don't think it was entirely something that they kind of came up with.
Super Contra 3 was the same.
Yeah, at least it was the North American version was that. I think that might have been something that was introduced for the North American version of Contra 3, the Alien Wars, as opposed to Contra Spirits as it was in Japan, because that's the way things were going at that time. Once you got to the 90s, it was like, we got to make it harder for North America with the rentals or whatever else. So, yeah, I think there was something like, I think there was 9 stages overall. And if you didn't play it on, if you played it on easy, maybe you could only see 6 like the first 6, like maybe that was it. I knew this ahead of time and said, well, I'm not gonna bother like graduating up, but I'll just go straight to the one that lets me actually finish the game. Basically. So, I did finish it, so it can't be that hard, because even then I was shit at games. So it really can't be that difficult, but it was pretty difficult at the same time. I'm not going to say it wasn't. But I mean, it's Contra. I mean, that's what it is. That's kind of what you expect to a fair degree. I'm intrigued by the EBA one myself, in terms of it's a bit of a different genre than has been done on Retroactive a lot of times, and it does offer that some capacity, probably not massive, I know, but to open it out a little bit with anybody of the listeners that might have an Oendan game or two, to chip in about those as well, because it's fundamentally the same game, but you know, quite different music and obviously the different scenarios for the actual kind of game. So, and like I said, there were 2 of those in Japan. And they're sort of equally valid, I guess. It's just like EBA is going to be the one that most people would have, that play as outside of Japan. But you've got that angle to it as well. Cause let's think about the DS. Yeah, but it did have a lot of games of interest that weren't released domestically. Even though, in some ways there were some good things happening with localization, games that in the past you might have thought wouldn't get localized, did. And Nintendo deserves some credit for that, with the kind of role they played with stuff like Layton and, Dragon Quest, for instance, on DS. They were pretty proactive about, let's try and take something we think we can sell these things. We can push these things, even though the genres or, it might not have always found the most kind of popularity outside of Japan. Like, we can make it work, and they did. And then a lot of other companies kind of seem to take chances on stuff that you couldn't really have imagined them doing that before. And so, just the fact that there were so many kind of cool games in Japan that people were buying was a real feat, and because it was still region free. There was only when, GBA was region free, Game Boy was region free. It was only when you got to DSi that they started going the other way. And then 3DS, of course, they went all the way, total region lockout until we got to Switch, where they kind of, just went back. But it was because of the piracy, obviously. It was related to that. The piracy thing came in and had a big part to play in how the DS kind of petered out a bit more kind of, meekly, than it might otherwise have done. But, that import scene that you had there was just something I associate with the system, and it's kind of cool. EBA kind of, it's somewhat encapsulating that is a kind of cool feature of it, I think.
Yeah, I think EBA is solid because it's very likely people have it.
Mm-hmm.
My only reason to worry is what we talked about earlier of, have I lost the ability to play this game?
There is an easy mode, I believe.
Oh,
which
yeah,
is
it's quite a few
hard,
different difficulties, right? The other thing I would say is, it's like, have you got a DS or, some sort of device that can play DS games that you're comfortable, like, with the screen taking that punishment? Because, like,
I was going to say, you got to think of how much it costs to acquire the game and also acquire a screen.
Commit to the blood.
Have you got some sort of, like, DS fat that still functions, like, and it's probably already got, like, a grid on it from mapping Etrian Odyssey, or something like that on the touch screen, just put it on there. Because, I mean, obviously it's all the tapping, and definitely I'm quite sure I was too enthusiastic with the tapping, but applying more force than was strictly necessary when you're trying to just really kind of get in rhythm. But the scribble spiral thing that they had, the effectively the equivalent of a drum roll, right? It was that kind of thing, wasn't it? Where you just scribble really in a tight little circle for like a big, like, finale type thing or something. I mean, that was when you think about it, it's just mad how reckless that was. But like, yeah, just fuck the fucking bottom screen up, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, Karen's DS is my old DS, and it's got the bucket card jockey, bottom right corner just completely shot because of you have to keep tapping at some point to give your horse stamina. Well, imagine basically like a big round scratch on the middle of your screen because you're spinning that freaking wheel. Yeah, you gotta make sure that to use also a fresh stylus, one that you didn't drop on the floor and that might have a nick or something, if you want to avoid damaging your screen.
Yeah, I would probably pull out the DSi XL because it does make it easier to hit the little targets.
Yeah, that's true, because that is one of the things that kind of happens, isn't it? When the higher difficulties, they get smaller. the circles get smaller, and then like the actual the timing kind of gets harder as well. Well, like in terms of like the way the circle, you get that kind of like shrinking circle, hits, kind of when it aligns, that's when you're meant to tap. And they give you kind of less warning essentially on the harder difficulty, but it becomes smaller on the touchscreen, and therefore, need to be more precise with the hit on the touchscreen. But yeah, and I never had a DSi XL, but I imagine it would help.
Mm-hmm.
I can promise you, having played it on both the DS Fat with its bad backlight or front lighting and the small targets, yeah, it helps. It helps a lot. Also, the big DS pen is very helpful because it's just easier to hold in your hand. Which I need to find that. I don't know where that is. Hopefully, it's with the DSi XL, which I also don't know where that is. So, hey, it should be with the other system stuff, so maybe it's all together. It's almost certainly not all together. Shit, I need to find a charger. Oh my god. All right, yep. All right, I'm willing to move that game to the next round of consideration. Are y'all good with that?
It's the same as the 3DS, right? The charger.
Is that true? It was true for launch 3DS. Is that true all the way to the new 3DS?
Maybe the DSi was the same. I feel like there's something.
The charger, the original DS charger is not the same. Because I had that big charger.
Not that.
DSi charger.
I haven't used the Fat in ages, but I feel like there's some sort of, maybe it's just the DSi and the 3DS. There's an overlap.
Yeah,
I believe so. I mean, I have them both right in front of me, and I can tell you that yes, the 3DS charger, it's the
same device.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to. Yeah, because I use them interchangeably, so I didn't have to I could charge it in two different rooms.
Yep.
All right. Are y'all good moving that one to the next round of consideration?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
All right, let me move it over.
So what's at the top right now? Bangai-O and Elite Beat, or it's just Elite Beat?
I haven't moved anything besides Elite Beat over.
Okay.
So let's talk about Bangai-O. I don't really want to buy Bangai-O.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. That's my only reason to go, I really don't want to do that one. I don't want to have to go buy that.
I suppose it's kind of a weakness and a strength of it is that it doesn't have any kind of particular structure to it. It's basically just a big collection of levels, because a lot of it was meant to be encouraging to make your own. Right. So it's just got a big, broad sampling of levels divided up in a few different categories, as I recall. But, really, it's just here's a bunch of kind of stuff, that we've done with this that you could do, just as much, with the level editor. So it's just kind of showing the various different sort of aspects of the gameplay and what you can do with the game. Now, what that means is you don't have some sort of big linear, difficulty curve or, like a narrative or anything. It's not like, I could play the beginning, middle, end. So it's always that make it easier for a retroactive, because it's not so much like, I've got to slog through this really difficult bit, kind of we talk about with Contra or stuff like that. But, so you could just kind of do a overview, sample the different types of levels and kind of see how they go, and then, maybe try making some levels yourself. But on the other hand, it does have that problem of it kind of makes it harder to talk about, right? You don't necessarily have those same kind of milestones that you can compare experiences with, with the four of us and with anybody, any of the listeners writing in and offering their sort of journey through it either. So yeah, like I said, it's I don't think it's all entirely a detriment, but there's definitely some downside to that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, it's more of a toolbox than a game, really, in a lot of ways.
All right, so let me go run through the list of ones that we haven't either just whacked. I don't think we've whacked any. Let's see if there's any we want to just take out.
I mean, we can take out Bangai-O. I don't think Bangai-O is.
I mean, three of y'all want to do it. I'm just one person, man. Just one person.
Mm-hmm.
But there is the question of how many people have got it out there. Again, I would imagine it's less than a lot. I mean, maybe it's not that many less than Contra 4, but it's probably less than that even. So,
yeah. All right, if y'all are good, I'll mark it as off.
I'm fine with it.
Bounce.
Okay.
Yeah, bounce
it.
It.
Cool. All right, because we got to move. All right, so that leaves us with Ghost Trick, Curious Village, Contra 4, DIY, Touch Detective, Retro Game Challenge. We haven't talked about the last two, so let's talk about them a little bit. Does anybody here have any interest in Touch Detective besides me? If the answer is no, that's fine.
Yeah, I talked about it on the podcast, an episode. I think we titled it "Don't Huff the Mushrooms" or something, because that is a puzzle in that game. You just microwave some mushrooms in a brown bag, and then you take a good breath, then you go and enter the land of dreams, basically, to solve a murder.
Keep in mind, mushrooms are sentient in this game as well. So
right,
yeah.
So yeah, I'm not super excited to replay that, I guess, for Retroactive.
I'm pretty neutral on it.
Okay, that's fine. We'll take it off the list then. Bam. All right, Retro Game Challenge. I really like this game. I think it's really fun. It has a structure. What's its availability?
Yeah, I don't own this, but I've always been curious to get a hold of it.
Okay, so can we get a read on general availability of this product? Can somebody take a look?
I got rid of all my tabs here, but it was okay. Like it was, but it is, I think, probably the most expensive game on this list.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously, I talked about it.
I can't get away with. It's going to be 60, 70. Not even including tax.
Pretty pricey.
Yeah, I would nix it.
Yeah. I did speak about playing the Japanese version of this, which has come out on Switch in Japan, and it's along with its sequel not so long ago. It's a shame that that Switch compilation hasn't been local. I mean, I can understand why, and I've talked about it when I discussed playing those games again, but it is a shame because I feel like it's got pretty good mileage for a Retroactive. You've got a bunch of kind of different elements of the game, but you can kind of experience those in relatively kind of short form. So you've got a fair amount to talk about, but not necessarily prohibitive time investment required to be able to talk about it. That's useful, and just the diversity of the content as well. Some of the different genres and stuff, and especially if it was a Switch version that had been localized, you'd have the sequel to take into account, which has even more kind of diverse stuff. You get some 16-bit stuff, you get some faux Game Boy stuff. Real shame. And
you get all the magazines that are fun to read, and it's neat.
Yeah, exactly. If they could have localized all of that, again, it's a lot of the reason why we don't have it. It's, again, amazing that the first one got localized, you gotta say. Because that must have been quite a considerable effort, and probably didn't end up being that great of a return, and it was always a bit of a projection, considering obviously in Japan, it's essentially like a licensed game. It's a tie-in to a TV show, with Arino, and Game Center CX. But like, not that was completely kind of unknown elsewhere in the world. Obviously, there was some sort of efforts to localize the show, and so forth. But the ceiling for it was so much lower. I'm amazed we got the first one. I'm glad we did because I really enjoyed it.
And that's where the name, the localized name comes from, because it was here. It was localized on G4 TV for Gamers, which was just a terrible channel in and of itself. But they localized one season of the show.
Yeah, it was Retro Game Master, right?
Yes.
And so Retro Game Challenge was the way of kind of tying it into that, was it?
Yeah. And so that was the connection point, because this game came out in the West around the same time the show was being localized here.
Yeah, it does. We probably mentioned already that did not come out in Europe, as you might imagine. Doing it for even more languages was probably not something any publisher was going to be interested in.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that leaves us with, we've only got one game in the next round, so let's go through what's left. Ghost Trick, Curious Village, Contra 4, DIY. So I want to push Curious Village into the next round.
Well, I proposed it, and I think it's got a lot of qualities that kind of should fit the bill for trying to take into account the whole system, that what it was about, you know what I mean, that platform.
Yeah
Let me check one thing, because this game was, at least at one point, available on mobile devices. I want to see if that's still true.
It doesn't strike me as a game that would be too difficult to obtain.
Leighton and the Curious Village is available on your cell phone for $10 on the Google Play Store.
Wow. That's almost nothing. And it's not that expensive on the eBay, even the Canadian one.
In fact, I will probably play it in HD on my phone as opposed to pulling out the DS to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm moving it over.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice. It's not overly long. It's not gonna make us feel old.
I haven't played it in like 15 years.
Yeah.
I will probably play it in an evening or 2 evenings based on the past history, but that's fine.
This is the real acid test for how much age has got to you, isn't it?
No, I'm better at puzzles now than I was then.
Well, there you go. Some things do improve with age. Why not? Like I said, it'll put it to the test.
I was caustic to these games. I would just rip through. Like, I'd get to those ones that are like, this one's 400 pick rots. You fuck, you'll never solve this. And I'm like, it's the character sitting in the bottom of the screen in the art, tap. And I'd just be like, you son of a bitch, how'd you solve it that fast? Fuck you, keep going. All right, so that leaves unaccounted for Ghost Trick, Contra 4, DIY. I kind of like the DIY choice, even if I just want to talk about it a little more.
I don't know if I have more to say about it without revisiting it, so I feel like we need to pick it if you wanted to talk about it more.
I mean, just to consider.
Yeah, like I'm looking at it, and I was just like checking, like, Game Builder Garage. I never actually bought that. Like I was considering it. It's still, it's like one of those cheap releases on the Switch that didn't seem to make that many waves. But I don't know. It's a concept. Like every once in a while, Nintendo will try to get us to make their games for them.
Mario Maker,
yeah.
Mario Maker
was
2.
Like definitely the one that worked, that worked the best. I mean, like I wouldn't mind, like it would certainly be different, trying to be creative as opposed to just consuming a story or going through,
All right, I'll move it down there. Of the last two, let's pick one so we can say we cut the list in half.
Okay.
John and I are both without any of our choices through yet. Let me see if any of ours are still around.
Well, I really said from the start that Bangai-O was kind of a bad choice, but it's
okay.
Yeah, I thought it was unique enough to.
Oh, and your other one was Retro Game Challenge, which was too expensive.
Yep.
Okay, no, but I think Bangai-O is interesting. It's just getting a hold of it and all that stuff. Okay, so that leaves us with Ghost Trick and Contra 4. Of the two, I would prefer Ghost Trick, even though I've already talked about it.
I would drop Contra 4.
Accessibility is the big obstacle there. It's a shame, you know.
I don't know why. I'm like the title scares me. Like I really don't want to discover it. I can't play these games anymore.
All right, fair.
I don't know.
Fear has won. Okay. The Contra himself would be disappointed in us. Also, why did they name those things Contra? It was not a good topic.
It's bizarre, isn't it? It's just one of these kind of like, we're being topical. It's like, I don't know in what way you think it's a good idea to be topical in this one particular occasion, but okay.
You did it. All right, we're down to 4. Elite Beat Agents, recommended by Guillaume. Professor Layton in the Curious Village, recommended by Greg, but I would have recommended it if he didn't. WarioWare DIY, also recommended by Guillaume. And Ghost Trick, recommended by me. Does anybody have a strong... We're going to end up with 4 votes for 4 games, I bet. This is. I should have left it at 3.
That. I mean, I think Ghost Trick, I think I would remove that just because it's...
Okay.
It's been
It's
done.
almost too available?
It's too
exactly.
I guess.
Yeah, like if you wanted to play it by now, you've played it. Like, so I don't know how many people we would rope into the...
I guess you could look at it as simply a vehicle for finally doing the Ghost Trick spoiler cast that we've never done.
I just want to talk about the end.
Yeah.
I forced all you fuckers to play it so I could do it.
Yeah,
maybe
we still haven't beaten it, so
maybe we'll just do that just Ghost Trick spoiler cast as like a separate episode.
I'm holding you fuckers to this. We're doing the spoiler cast. Fine. After 20 years, I'll get to talk about Sissel and the end of that fucking game.
I mean, yeah, I had played that game before I was on the podcast, and now I do have the iOS version and everything. So
yeah, like I said, it is. If you haven't played it yet, do it. It's on sale right fucking now. It is totally worth the full price. It is totally worth the full price, but it's not. It's not the full price right now. It's much cheaper than the full price. Make it a gift to yourself. Make it a gift to yourself this holiday season. And play Ghost Trick. All right.
So since I have like 2 in the final 3, do I get to put down one of them, or
I'm afraid we're doing time cop rules, which means that they both nudge into each other and cease to exist.
Right, before turning into a CG blob.
CG purple
into a CG blob, yeah. It's tough. I guess, like, because I already own DIY and I would have to go and buy Elite Beat Agents, like, that's one of the reasons why I would go with WarioWare, but I also think, it might be the more interesting discussion. As I said, like, Elite Beat Agents is kind of, like, emblematic. Like, it's definitely, like, the game that I associate with the DS.
People have played it and have talked about it on this show.
But
times.
WarioWare, I feel like it's been maybe more forgotten, but it's still kind of like it's a quality title.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with that, isn't it? Because the participation is, on the one hand, it has the possibility to be sort of more profound, almost, because people actually, the more active participatory element to the game in making things. Well, on the other hand, it may only make it more difficult to actually secure.
No, trust me, my game is good, I promise.
Such participation and the sharing problem persists.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna put my flag in the sand here and say I want to do Curious Village. I haven't played that game since it came out. And I've played every Layton game since then, including that fucking terrible Layton Brothers thing.
I've never played it, so I'd be willing to give it a shot.
Yeah, it's not exciting to me, but I'd go along.
Okay. So do we want to cut it down to just those two?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Done. Guillaume killed EBA for anybody listening at home right now. Guillaume hates EBA.
I'm sorry.
She's not sorry.
That little girl is never seeing her father again.
I mean, she wasn't anyway. That thing was too fucking hard on the hardest difficulty. I was ruining Christmas over and over again on the most difficult level. I didn't even care. I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. The last stage I remember being an absolute nightmare on the hardest difficulty.
Yeah, Jumper Jack Flash.
Yeah.
God.
just a goddamn nightmare.
So great though.
All right. So I don't know how to split the difference here. Like, they're both interesting. I think they'd both be interesting to talk about. I think the time investment on DIY might be lower, but it might be harder to talk about in a way, if that makes sense. Because it's not going to be a shared experience, if you get what I'm saying.
Well, you can still, like, there's still a structure to it. You know, like, it walks you through the steps, and so I feel like we can definitely discuss the ways that Nintendo kind of teaches you and nudges you towards making something that's actually, like, not a product, but yeah, like making something that works. A minigame, a micro game that makes sense.
Sure. I guess part of that is just like, I make shit all the time. All right. Are we at an impasse? Which is fair. If we're at an impasse, here's what I would recommend. And you guys can give me your feedback. Why don't we, because we're going to have to acquire these. Somebody's going to have to acquire at least one game. Mm-hmm. Why don't we open it up? We have these two. These are the two. And we let our audience make cases for either of them, and then we decide at the start of the next episode. John, I know you won't be here. I'll get your feedback from you ahead of time.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that sounds
good.
We're
opening it to the audience vote, but
it's not a vote.
John, Greg, do you not...
yeah.
Do you lean one way or the other? Or?
Well, I mean, I nominated Professor Layton, so I'll stick with that. And I guess, you know, the danger for me with DIY, if from the evidence of, you know, kind of Mario Maker more recently, even Bangayo back in the day, is that I am incapable of making anything fun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't own DIY, so I'd have to jump through some hoops to get it. Whereas I could get, I mean, with Professor Layton, I mean, you can actually get it even cheaper than $10 on the Google Play Store, because you can just you can do the monthly subscription for $5 and it's free with the pass or whatever. You don't own it that way, but you know, whatever.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know why I'm not excited by the choice, but the fact that it is so available is definitely probably what should probably tip the balance.
I'll be honest. I was sitting between the two, going like, that could be fun, but that could be a nightmare. Like, I just didn't know how DIY was going to go. Part of me is like, that would be so different. But I am certainly willing to try to acquire it for the educational value that comes with that. But okay, why don't we go with Layton then? We've never done a Layton retroactive.
Cool.
Which is kind of nuts because there's so many of these goddamn things. All right. Well, on that, that's our retroactive. Professor Layton and the Curious Village. We're going to do it sometime around the holidays. We'll probably record a little bit before then. So, again, it is available. You could buy it on eBay. It has never been ported to a later Nintendo system for some goddamned reason. It is also available on mobile for cheap, potentially for free if you have some subscription services, apparently. So, on that, emails, send them. RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com. That is RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com. Greg, what is our music to conclude this week? I bet it's topical.
Well, I don't want to suggest that a fix was in from the very beginning. But, I mean, technically it's not from that game, right?
No.
So basically, I've been thinking for a little bit, we're going to have the 20th anniversary of DS coming up. What, best kind of encapsulates that system's various qualities. And, the Layton series for me, is pretty much among the best sort of candidates that you can offer for that purpose. It just, again, the way it used the two screens, the touch screens, and just that kind of particular kind of, again, alchemy of different elements of the experience and the way that it could appeal to, a different kind of audience, but also, Nintendo did a pretty good job of trying to sell it to people who were just very active DS users as well. It's just this kind of weird coalition of people and artistic elements and, puzzle logic and all this kind of stuff that just, especially, for me in that first game, just came together really, really beautifully. And, but we, after, kind of suggesting that we wanted to do something with Layton soundtracks, because we haven't done too many in over 9 years. The database suggests that there's only 3 that we've done. So we had, and 2 of those were from 3DS games. So we had a large sort of field to choose from among. I did ask James, what he thought might be among the most suitable kind of tracks that we could go with, and we ended up settling on something from Unwound Future, the 3rd game. So any suggestions of impropriety that this was all a sham and that we was always going to come to Curious Village, well, that's just completely unacceptable. It's unfounded, baseless, I would say.
No, I actually forgotten the connection until I was about to cue you up to pick the song. So, the song in question, I guess I should post it. I did post it in the chat, didn't I?
I'm pretty sure you did. Yeah, it'd be up a bit now, but
yeah. The song in question is not actually from the game. It is from a live recording they did that was included in the soundtrack to the game. The song is called "More London Streets." This is a riff off of a song that was must have been in Curiousville. It could have been in Diabolical Box or Pandora's Box, the second game, called London Streets. This is a second London. It's kind of like creepy walking around a dark street kind of music. But Unwound Future actually taking place in London. Yeah, just clearing my throat. Taking place in London rather than the other two, one of which takes place in a goddamned cave, and the other one takes place in the mysterious village.
Was that like mushroom gas in the second one?
The cave gas, yeah. Cave gas. The answer to that one is cave gas. It's very stupid. Mysterious Village is dumb. Mysterious Village is dumb. But that series absolutely goes fucking haywire. By 3, it's completely off the rails. And then 4, 5, 6, they're like, all right, we can't do this shit anymore. Let's just pretend there was an ancient civilization that had magic. We're not even going to try to explain this shit anymore. It's just magic. And then Catriel's, it was a dog went missing. They really took the stakes down a little bit, is what I'm going to say. The dog does talk though, so I guess there's something. But yeah, this is the answer to 2 is cave gas. People are having cave gas hallucinations. Why does that make someone who's old run around like he's spry? Don't ask. But yeah, it's not cave gas in this game. So, yeah, this is the More London Streets live version. It is actually a very nice song. So enjoy that. And on that, I believe it is time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.